Welcome to this decision meeting. Today we will be discussing the question of the appropriate usage of native mobile apps versus web apps for various BYU Idaho mobile application needs. Currently there's been some development on an Android app as well as I believe an iOS app. And this question will be brought up going forward as more and more university computer resources are optimized for mobile usage, whether they be class registration and just getting around campus and getting information, things like the grad planner and so forth. So we will be discussing whether those should be targeted as native iOS and Android apps, as well as for any third platforms that may develop, or if the focus should be on making a single mobile app or a mobile web app that will work on both. So we'll let David go ahead and start the discussion.
So the position that I will be taking is that we should be using a web-based application. I see the main benefits to this being that the device only needs to have an internet connection and a browser and doesn't need any special updates or anything. Everything would be controlled by the host. All the information and computing would be done by the host and be really easy to upgrade. It also allows opportunities for it to be more secure rather than having an application that could be debugged and stuff and reworked on any handheld device or laptop. It'll be all server-based where it can be monitored every millisecond that the clock ticks.
And on the approach of native apps, the main benefit is that by writing apps on directly for the native platform, they perform better, often faster. They feel more natural to the user. They're often tailored to fit visual human interface guidelines of either iOS or Android specific platform. Make the user feel more at home in their device. And also tend to perform much better when offline, when an internet connection is not available, because the developer is generally forced to keep most of the code local, except for maybe a little bit of data access online. But that's considered the secondary route rather than the primary, unlike with a web app. And I find that, although I have found that sometimes a mix between the two may be preferred. Some of the advantages of native apps like push notifications and tight integration can be mitigated by using what's called a hybrid app, where there's a little bit of native wrapper code and that code runs the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that the web app would be. So that JavaScript can be written once, but then there's, for both platforms, but there's still a little bit of native code handling that. Your thoughts on that, David?
I'm kind of confused. If it's a web-based app, doesn't that mean that it all is done through the browser? How would there be any naive or native work into that?
This, it is a browser, but rather than it being run by the direct Chrome or Safari on the device, it's being baked in an application in what's called a web view, where it's a native application that then opens that runs the HTML and JavaScript there. And so it's still written once, just in the JavaScript, the bulk of it. But then the native kind of encapsulates that and runs the JavaScript inside the native app rather than the user going to the web browser.
Oh, I mean, if I'm spending most of my time on the browser anyways, if between my email and all the other little sites I go to, wouldn't it just be easier just to have it all just in the same browser application? Or am I a weird one?
That's definitely a valid point. Though some users do find it more convenient to be able to just go to an app on their home screen.
Yeah.
Although that can be done by instructing although the web browsers do permit that to be done by merely in Chrome or Safari, there's an add to home screen option that basically puts a bookmark to the mobile app, the web app, on the home screen.
All right.
However, that's a process that's definitely not familiar to most users. Most are more familiar with going to the App Store and searching and finding an app there.
Well, which one would be easier to develop then? Would it be easier to have the web-based one or the multiple apps on different stores?
A single mobile app is definitely easier to develop. It's only one language, one development environment, which is also common to a computer, a desktop app, with more minor tweaks to make it, well, I shouldn't say tweaks, but minor changes to get it working well on a mobile device, as opposed to completely tossing out the JavaScript and writing it in either Objective-C or Java.
Yeah. I don't know, because I could easily see it being a lot easier to make um, that application to be uh, run through the web browser instead of having those one for iOS or for Android or for Windows Mobile or any other thousands of OSs that are out there.
And you definitely right about that. It's easier to target the one web platform. And at the moment, there's definitely two dominant mobile platforms, Android and iOS. Windows Phone has been creaking along. It's dying out now. BlackBerry's long dead. Although the possibility that the third will come along is always there.
Yeah.
But I think it's sounding like the most of the time the benefits of speed of development tend to be more important, with the advantages of native apps kind of taking a second place and maybe being relevant only for very specialized applications where the performance is needed.
Well, I mean, usually when you launch a product, it doesn't, the first run isn't going to be good. You're going to have another update and
Yeah.
another update. And if that person has to keep going back and telling their phone to re-download the application or the update rather than just going to the website and seeing that it's up to date every time you go.
Yeah. That's one big advantage of web apps, is that every time you go, it's the latest version.
I don't know. I think that's one of the biggest things because my phone, it's constantly telling me I have like 25 updates I need to do, and just I don't care anymore because
I've been in that though. I run out of storage space and I can't get the new ones, and
yep. I don't know.
controlling that user experience is definitely important as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we could focus on the connection aspect because my web-based one won't work if you don't have an internet connection, or you're going to need a steady connection to be able to do anything.
That is true. It is possible to kind of cache most of the code and let it run locally, but that takes a little bit more part on the developer. And at least so far, my experience has been that doesn't always work perfectly anyway.
Yeah. You end up re-downloading it 2 minutes later anyways.
Yeah. Or you think the code's downloaded and you go offline and it didn't actually all come and you're just stuck with a half-baked app.
Well, how would the native app work? Would it have like a periodic connection thing, or how would that?
I mean, it would depend on the native app. Some, whether they're web or native, need a connection the whole time anyway. But the paradigm of native apps is generally only use the internet for what you need. Whereas web apps are kind of, well, we have the internet. We'll assume we always have it unless we go shift our paradigm otherwise.
Fair enough.
Are there any other aspects to this we haven't considered?
Um,
Rate of development,
well, how about like
updates, processing, as in
if your application is actually doing stuff like your time on the processor is more driven by the application as opposed to the web server. Web-based.
Well, the Objective-C or Swift, which is also a viable option for iOS, I should mention, and Java are all lower level languages. And so they can perform definitely much faster than JavaScript code can. JavaScript is very much a slower language, and mobile web apps definitely run into performance problems there.
Well,
so when performance is needed, native is definitely a strong winner.
Well, I mean, if I'm doing something on my phone, any sort of like reading through an Adobe document, after like 10 minutes, I could feel my phone warming up a fair amount.
Yeah.
Because it has to sit there and keep iterating through and loading up every new character, as opposed to a web one where it just sends out its 8 little bytes and then I've got an entire sentence.
That's also true. Although I contend that a well done native app can eliminate a lot of those problems too by just handling a bit at a time what it needs.
Okay.
But you're definitely right. Or mobile apps, native apps tend to perform better. They have closer access to the hardware, usually better 3D processing capabilities. Performance, development rate, updates, networking. UI feel tends to be, well, I guess this can go either way. If the goal is to create for the user a unified experience across all platforms, a web app is probably better because it's a single code base. But if the goal is to make it fit in with everything else on their device, native is better. More direct access to things like Google's material design, which is currently the paradigm for user interaction on Android, or direct access or closer access to Apple's Cocoa Touch elements there.
Okay, so which one would you rather do then? Would you rather it be a web-based or the native, or kind of a mixed one?
I think it depends, but something like the first approach is probably going to be for web. And as more native features are needed, they can be either incrementally added by with either directly in the browser, as sometimes available, things like adding to home screen. I believe Chrome now allows push notifications on Android. I'm not sure about Safari, but I think that can be kind of a web app to start, and then if more native things are needed, even a hybrid may be a good stepping stone before native is needed.
Would that demand too much work by university? Would they have to have many people doing this, or would it be a slow process?
I think one of the big advantages to web is that it's a single code base, so it takes fewer developers focused on it. And then that point, if it is split, it's just the native wrapper code that starts to differ, but the same JavaScript running on all of it.
Okay. So, final thought, we're kind of thinking of initially the web-based one would probably be best, but then after time, it would seem that a cross between the two would work out to be most efficient for everyone, for the user and for the developer.
at least in most instances. There may be times when good performance is needed off the bat, possibly with a good, maybe a 3D model of the university or kind of a very detailed, when the performance of native would be immediately recognized. But I think in most cases, web is the direction to start.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any other further thoughts?
No, I think we've covered basically all the bases for app development.
Yeah, sounds like we've come to a consensus. Guess that closes our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.